Welcome to the Whitetail Watch, produced by Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. It's Wednesday, the 12th of November, and I'm guessing that just about every year at this time, I talk about the same topic. When we come back from break, I'm going to dig into the rut's lull, what that means, and how to hunt it. Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails is brought to you by Redneck Blinds, Code of Silence Apparel, the Hunt Stand app, Whitetail Institute, research equals results, B3 Archery, Muddy Outdoors tree stands, Stealth Cam trail cameras, My Outdoor TV, and Hoyt. There is a definite slowdown in the middle of the rut when the highest number of does are in estrus. And we've talked about it many times about the bell-shaped curve of how the estrus cycles work. Early in the rut, late October, early in November, there aren't very many does in estrus, so the bucks have to look for them, they have to hunt. Then as you get further and further into November, and again, we're dealing with the northern 2/3 of North America. In the southern states, they have different rut phases and rut timing, so it's a little bit trickier. You have to talk to a local expert on that. But anyway, getting back to the other parts of the country, as you're going up that time frame, getting further and further into November, the number of does in estrus is going up. So you're riding that upper end of that bell-shaped curve. You got a lot of does in estrus right in the middle of November. That's when the curve peaks. That's when the highest number of does are in estrus. And that's what we're running into right now. And the bucks, the mature bucks, the bucks that are more dominant are going to be the ones that are doing a lot of the breeding. They don't do all the breeding because the numbers just don't work for that. They can't breed that many does, but they get to pick whatever doe they want. So what that means is they're always going to be tied up with a doe. Whether they find it or they steal it from some other buck, they're going to have does during that whole period when there's a lot of does in estrus, because they don't have to look very hard, and again, they can just steal them from other bucks. I've seen that happen many times. And for us as bow hunters or deer hunters during this time frame, it makes things pretty tough because we have to have natural movement. And if you're hunting with a gun, you could probably do some pushes, and you can maybe do some still hunting. You can make the action happen a little bit more. But as bow hunters, we're so dependent upon natural movement that if these bucks are locked down with does, we're just not going to see very much. And that's just the reality of the middle of November. I wish I had a really good formula for that, but I've hunted it. I went back and figured it out one time, how many straight years. It's like 35 straight years I've hunted almost every day of the rut, and I still haven't seen a clear way to hunt the lull. You just got to get lucky. You got to be able to catch, you got to be there, and you got to catch a buck coming off a doe and looking for another one, and it doesn't happen very often. Or sometimes you can get lucky and you can actually see a buck that's holed up with the doe, and you can sneak up on them. And I've done that before, and that's pretty exciting because the buck's not going to leave that doe. And he may even see you there, but if the doe doesn't run, he's not going to run either. It's pretty dang comical, but it's very rare for that to happen. So it sounds bad because you got a weekend coming up now. That's right square in the middle of the lull, the 15th and the 16th, but I usually take that time frame off. This is when I get my work done in the office. I get the stuff done that I've been putting off during the first part of the rut, get myself ready for the second part, which I really like too. And we'll talk about that one next week. But so if you're trying to hunt this weekend, I think you still have to stick with the same patterns that you've been using in the week prior. You got to be hunting the areas where the does are concentrated, which means the fringes of the doe concentration areas. Some of the does are going to start cycling out, and they're going to be bred, and they will start coming back to food sources again, a little bit more actively, coming out into the open in the evenings. So there might be a little bit of hope of catching some action around the food sources, but it's going to be pretty limited. It's just a rough time. So I think your best hope is to focus on the places where there are the most does. Thick areas are usually pretty good because the bucks are generally looking in those places for the does to begin with. And then also those are typical spots where they'll push the does too. During the breeding time. They don't like to be mixed up with the other deer. When a doe is in estrus, they don't continue to hang out with the rest of the herd because there's just too much going on. I mean, they're both getting the buck's got to fight off the other bucks, and the doe's got to constantly be on guard for other bucks coming in and trying to steal her away. It's just not, it doesn't work well for them to stay in concentrated areas. So a lot of times they kind of slip off somewhere for the breeding. So you can either try to find those kind of spots. You could glass open areas, CRP, brushy fence lines. You could potentially find where they're sequestered or holed up, but those are tricky spots to find too. So again, it comes back to just hoping to find a doe that hasn't been bred yet and a buck that's looking for her. So you're focused on those areas where the does are most concentrated. I know the expectation doesn't sound very good. I know a few people who have had success during the lull, but they're not doing anything different than what I'm talking about here. It's just they get lucky. So you just got to really hope for luck. You got to hope that, like I said, you got a doe that's coming into estrus and a buck that's looking for the next one, and the two sort of cross paths in the area where you're sitting. So good luck. There will be better times on the back end of this. If you haven't filled your tag yet and you're still going to have some time free, the back end of the rut can be really good. And like I said, I'll talk about that next week. Well, I appreciate you joining me for this episode of the Whitetail Watch, produced by Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. See you right back here again next week. And remember to always dream big.